All right. Okay. Zach, you're the one I care about. Are you ready?
Okay. Just go. I'm ready.
Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wild, and we're here to do our first part of Season 3's breakdown of Cobra Kai. Season 3. Did I say that? I think I said that.
You said season 3, yes.
Okay, good. Well, this is the third season of Cobra Kai, which is 3 seasons long, and we're going to talk about the third season tonight. The third season starts with one episode that's called, what is it? Overbalance or something?
Wow, we're really tight on this one, guys.
Oh, no. No, it's like Aftermath. I think it's Aftermath.
Yeah.
It's Aftermath.
It is,
Aftermath, where we learn the aftermath of what happened at the end of season 2 and going into the third season. It's 3 seasons, if you didn't catch that yet. And we're going to break it down and talk about some of the things with the ramifications of the big battle, the big kung fu or karate war that happened in the high school halls at the end of season 2, which wasn't just brushed over, and a lot of characters had some effects by it that was well written, I feel. And like I mentioned in our overall review, these first 2 episodes I really liked because of the main tone that they carried from that last episode of season 2. So that's what I really appreciated. But I just want to kind of go through, just talk about some of the things that we noticed, things we liked about the characters, and any Easter eggs that we find that mostly Josh is going to point out because he's got that Easter egg eagle eye, like a 6-year-old on Easter Sunday looking for Easter egg. Get it?
That was blind. That came from the blind side or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, so Aftermath starts.
Is it Sandra Bullock over there? Blind side? It's late. Anyway, okay. So yeah. On that note, I have to say, in our last review or our overall review, I feel like I might have been a little harsh on my opinions of the first 2 episodes. Because as I said, when I watched it, I watched the first 2 episodes the night it came out, and then I went to sleep and I came back. And I feel watching it a second time that, because I just was like, man, this is like so crazy, all this stuff going on, and there just doesn't seem to be a lot of consequences going on. And I think it was just late for me when we were watching at midnight on New Year's, because there were a lot of consequences. I mean, like Aisha, so it explains why Aisha and Stingray are not on the show, right? I mean, Aisha's not on the show because their parents moved her to a private school, which also explains why Sam is now alone, because no matter what, even though Sam and Aisha had like conflict in the first 2 seasons, they were always like best friends and always came back together, right? So you have that. You have Stingray now is on probation and is not allowed within 500 feet of a child, which is actually great. And I love how they all call him Stingray.
Yeah, he's
like Stingray was not like.
They freaked out. The parents were like, "What about that other adult that was there?" And he's like, "He was not even hired."
He wasn't even an employee. Yeah. And then,
hang on, before we move from Aisha, it wasn't just that she was put in a private school. They moved. This was such a big deal. They sold the house and to relocate. That's pretty crazy. And who knows? I don't know. We don't know where her dad is, but they, that was so extreme. They didn't want her running into these kids at the whatever the rich people party place. What do they call those? I don't know. I've never
Country Club.
That's it. Country Club. Thanks, Ashley.
You're wrong.
That's why Ashley's here.
That's
right.
why she's here. Yeah. You can feel my stupors of thoughts, and there will be many stupors. But yeah, that's a big deal, especially with all that clout. They've known each other. They've known those families for all those years. For them this to be so drastic that they pulled her moved her to a new school, but moved. That's a pretty big deal. I can't imagine something so big that I would like relocate my family, including all my own friends that I've had if I lived, in one area for that long of a time. So anyway, just want to say this is a big deal. It's not just the school.
Yeah, and then also on top of that, so we know Sam got suspended for 2 weeks, even though she didn't really start the fight, nor did she really have anything to do with anything that, she was just kind of a bystander.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that, she was the one who, made out with Miguel or whatever. But, and then,
I'm sorry, can we just say how everyone knows about that? Like 3 different adults around town mentioned, I heard she was making out with a guy. I'm like, how are you guys all in on this drama, this gossip?
Well, and that I think is the most interesting thing. You're talking about like kind of throwbacks to the original shows. Like I do love how how Daniel is kind of getting a taste of what other characters have gone through in the original movies, right? Because now he's getting a little bit of taste of what Kreese probably went through, losing all of his students and having his karate, which is a huge part of him, and which is something, I mean, Terry Silver says in Karate Kid 3 that, and you know, I believe it to be true, even though he was lying to Daniel about his death. He said karate was his life, right? And it clearly was his life, because here he is, a dang near 80-year-old man, still trying to get Cobra Kai back from his student and lead these little kids into some sort of crazy karate military gang war thing.
No offense, Martin Cove. We know you're not actually 80. Don't be offended.
So he is in his 70s. But anyway, so Daniel has some real world consequences there too, is that everyone, I mean, they said, you're the one who taught that Miyagi crap. Yeah. You know, is that they said it, you know, to the student, and your student's the one that injured somebody. You know, and so now the tables have turned, and now everyone is looking at him as if he's a bully. Yeah. So
when he says that, some guy shouted that out from the peanut gallery too. He's like, I heard you're the one that was a bully.
Right. Which I thought was kind of funny, because it's like we've had conversations over the last 2 seasons about how Tim is like, oh, you know, actually, I think that Daniel is the real bully. Daniel's the real problem here. Oh, Daniel. I have an irrational hatred of Daniel. And here,
I've influenced the writers. What can I say?
Now, well, no, but the thing is what you've been saying, though, is what a lot of people have been saying, right? We're Team Cobra Kai now, right? And so I think the writers are kind of giving a nod to some of those things.
Right.
You know? And so, and I think that, honestly, I think because a lot of people I've talked to about this show, you know, everybody seems to have started watching it ever since it's on Netflix. You guys are late. Anyway, so
the YouTube Red show. Yeah, YouTube Red.
Yeah. So they all kind of said the same thing, was that like they all had the same questions during the fight in season 2, right? Like, where were the parents? Where were the teachers? Like, how did this thing go on for 26 minutes? You know what I mean? Like, it was 26 minutes of the last episode was a big karate gang war in the middle of the school.
Like 2 faculty members in any shot.
Yeah, right. And so they spend a lot of time trying to explain that stuff in the first episode, right? They talk about NEA guidelines, say that they can't break up a fight between students.
Can't step between the lady counselor is in there saying that stuff.
Yeah, and so you know they're kind of trying to explain away some of the more unbelievable aspects of the episode, and I think that the writers probably hear some of the criticisms, and they go, okay, we got to address that.
Or just fan feedback, even if it's not criticism, like questions like, "Ooh, how come?" And they're trying to figure it out. They're like, "Okay, what's happening?" Yeah.
Right. So, anyway, I think I was a little too harsh.
I agree. I think you were too harsh. I think we were saying there were consequences. They had all sorts of stuff. So.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I did love the thing. There were a couple of things from that first little sequence. The one guy who was like, I thought karate died out in the 80s. Yeah. Like, I thought that was a pretty good line. Yeah. And then I also liked the line where she was talking about the program, the Hugs Not Kicks or whatever.
Yeah, and it's more effective than Dare.
Yeah, it's kind of like Dare, only it actually works.
Yeah. Well, the line I liked is when they're bagging on saying we should get rid of all karate and it'll be no more tolerated in the school. And then Daniel jumps up and he starts defending karate, and that's when they get into, well, since you're a student, you're part of the problem. But he says, don't turn this into some kind of karate footloose. Or,
karate footloose. I like that one, too.
Yeah. But what I like about that moment is this is Daniel where, 2 seasons ago, he's the one that charged right into the board over the tournament and everything. He's this highly established and recognized person in the community. But here he's on the front row trying to stand up saying that karate's not the problem. I was bullied as a kid and karate helped me. And he's like, you were the bully. But when everyone starts shouting and yelling at these alternate opinions about him and the effects of the karate dojos, he sits down and it just shows, the camera just stays on him and his wife just sitting down, just looking at each other like kind of in shock for how everything has flipped for them. And I thought that was a really heavy moment and the music gets all drowned. You just hear the drowning of the chatter in the meeting. But like he's just realizing like, man, something's lost. I've lost that clout that I didn't have before. I thought that was a very effective way to lead his character, that things are not the same for Daniel anymore. That was the first step of the ramifications.
And this really happens. I don't know if you guys remember Totally Awesome Computers and Super Dan, but he had a whole bunch of stuff happen. His stuff, his businesses struggled after that, and I think eventually got bought out. And like things that happen to you and your family in your community, people respond to, and they will react to it, and you have to deal with it. It's unfortunate, but I mean, it's not like this is like crazy that everyone knows about it. They're celebrities in their environment. Everyone sees the billboards, the commercials. They're not huge celebrities, but they're celebrities. So people want to know what's going on with their family, especially when they're involved in all this crap.
Well, and everybody knows him as the karate guy.
Right.
Yep.
And that was interesting where she said that. She says no one's it turns out when there's a big karate fight in the school, slashing and kicking the prices is no longer an appealing marketing
tool.
Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting. Anything else? I think the meeting was really good at setting all that stuff up. But then we move into, he's talking about the other characters with the ramifications. Sam. It shows Sam going in for her first day back in the school. It shows the other kids too, we'll talk about. But the biggest thing for me was when Sam goes in, after it feels like the opening of a Grease movie where it's like kind of the first day back and everyone's there talking and goofing. And then your hero, or your lead character comes in. And she comes in and gets through security, just quiet, sweet little Sam. And then she goes and she sees people are looking at her and talking about her. And then she tries to go up the stairs and she hits the handrail. And it just bombs on that for a second. And you just see it, just that dread and that horror of the memories of what happened there. And it's not just the wound and the cuts that she got. It wasn't the beating that happened. It was just the whole thing. And she makes a comment later, which was really insightful, where she says, it's not about if you're a girl in a fight, it's not the same as if it's a boy. Even if you win, it's like a whole different thing. You're not looked at the same, and you're not like a hero or a tough guy. But you see all that pain in her face when she touches that, and that has the little flashbacks of Miguel falling and Tori attacking her and everything. And I love how that played out later. Really beautifully set up in that first sequence before she bailed. But I don't know. And Josh, you didn't seem to really praise Sam too much in our overall review, but did you feel a little differently about that when you watched it again?
Well, I did like the consequences of her having some PTSD from something like that, because that's pretty significant. I mean, Tori did come after her with a freaking spike or whatever, that spiked knuckle thing that she had. And on top of, and she's got a scar on her arm for the rest of her life from that. And then also, a person who she cares about very strongly, two guys who she cares about very strongly, one of her best friends / boyfriend and her ex, like her boyfriend kicked her ex-boyfriend off of a rail and busted it through. And you can tell when because they interview her in the car wash thing. Mm-hmm. And she was like, they asked her, they said, well, wasn't it a Miyagi-Do person who, a Miyagi-Do trainee that was the one who kicked him off the railing or whatever? Right. And she says, well, that was an accident. At least I hope it was. Like, she doesn't even really know what Robbie's intentions were, right? And so she's got all that going on.
I know the answer to that. He's a punk and he's vindictive, and he was trying to get the upper hand the whole time. He's a snake, which is why he ends up where he deserves.
See, Ashley, this is what we're talking about: irrational hatred of Robbie and Dan.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for months.
Oh, I love this season. It puts him right where he belongs the whole time. Anyway.
So
I just liked all that with Sam. Go ahead.
Let's talk about Johnny for a second.
Okay.
Because Johnny, he feels, it's his son and his student who
double pain.
His student who he has been trying to do right by, because how badly he was dealing with Robbie, throughout his life. He looked at this as almost like a second chance to be there for another, be a father figure to somebody. And now his real son just paralyzed or put into a coma and possibly dead his student. I mean, that's
And the guy in the bar calls that out. He says, "I'm no doctor, but in my 2 weeks in a coma usually means you're dead."
Yeah, and that was actually
That was the cop.
Yeah, that was the cop when he's in jail.
Oh, it was the cop that said that? I thought
Yeah.
it was Oh, anyway.
So, but one thing that was interesting, that a little bit of a throwback, I found some correlation to the beginning of part 2. So Johnny puts his hand through a car window. So he goes through, and when his hand comes out, his hand isn't, I don't know if there's any significance to this, but he punches through it, pulls the guy out, and his hand isn't bloody, but it's definitely bruised.
I know the significance.
Yeah.
Unless Zach wants to field this one.
No, go for it.
So it sets it up in the first season, right? When he's teaching Miguel how to punch. When you punch, pretending this is the target, you're not punching to hit your person here. You're punching through this to hit the guy behind it. When Kreese punched at Miyagi, he was punching here. Miyagi dodged, and so it hit right at the impact of the glass. Johnny was punching through the glass to get to the guy. Bam!
That does not
thought of that.
that does not explain why there are no cuts on his hand.
Because if you're going through it, right, Zach? Am I wrong? If you're punching, you're going to hit it about in the same spot. If there's enough pressure to break it, it's going to do more damage if you going all the way through it.
You're supposed to punch through.
And you'd have less cuts, right? I would think so.
The real answer is it's not real glass. That's the real answer.
Thanks, filmmaker slash martial artist Zach. Thanks for shooting out all my wisdom. I pulled out of thin air. All right,
But
my answer was it was in tune or on theme with the series itself.
yeah, well, okay. I just thought it was interesting how that happened.
Yeah, it's more dramatic for Kreese to be looking at his bloody hand. But yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and also I find it the consequences for Dimitri is he's suddenly really popular,
right?
With girls. So that was kind of funny.
What I actually like is he's not crazy popular, but he's acknowledged by people as a student among them now. Yeah. Like the girls say hi to him when they walk by.
And he goes, I was acknowledged by a female of the same species or something like that. It's just good. But what's great about that is it's right after Hawk is in there bragging up to his buddies, and he's like, we're going to be the kings now. And he turns to say hi to the freshman girl. Freshman girls come in, and he's like, hey, if you need protection, oh man. He's like, yeah, I heard how you pee your pants and got thrown into the glass. And then other girls walk past Dimitri, like, hi, Dimitri. And he's like, woo, showing that contrast. And again, I'm saying this is the very beginning of that turn for Hawk by the end of the show, where he's like being that vicious bad A isn't the triumph, the victor that he was talking about the whole time, that Kreese was indoctrinating them with. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry. Josh, do you have more on Dimitri?
No,
I like that.
Was pretty much it. I thought that was interesting. Dimitri's getting a little bit more play. One thing I also found very interesting when I watched this episode a second time, watched 1 and 2 a second time in preparation for this.
Yeah.
When you're starting to see some of the better qualities of Daniel, he's been humbled now, big time by this. And one of the loyalties one of the qualities you see about Daniel, and it's referenced later on in this season, is Daniel has a very strong loyalty to family and those around him. So, like, for example, he brought Louis back.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
How could you possibly bring Louis back?
Yeah,
you can come to family dinner, but you can never work for me again.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, though, is like that was instilled from him from his mom. His mom told him you never turn your back on family. That's what she said in the second season. Even though he's like telling her, he's like, Mom, he freaking set the guy's car on fire, and she's like, you never turn your back on family. But here you have it. He said he was the first one at our door when Sam, when he found out about Sam. And then on top of that, also here in this episode and episode 2, he's taking all of his time away from his struggling business to go and find Robbie, strictly for the reason of, listen, the lawyer told me, I talked to a lawyer, the lawyer told me that if he turns himself in, it'll be a way easier sentence. So I'm going to find him before the cops do, and he goes on his Tango and Cash mission in episode 2. So in these episodes, you're starting to see some of these better qualities of Daniel that you haven't really seen in the first couple seasons.
Which is why I like Daniel a lot more this season, a lot more. But remember who sent him on that journey? It was Louis. Louis is the one that figured out the missing the inventory.
Right.
And Johnny or Daniel is one that pieced it together when he says it's been 2 weeks missing. They pieced it together, but it was Louis doing a diligent job that got that started. So I actually like that. A little redemption there, Zach, right? Just a little bit.
I actually think he's getting much more like Miyagi. I think he's learned a lot of lessons in the first 2 movies, and he's seasons.
This is season 3. If anyone didn't catch that, this is the 3rd season. Go ahead.
But he's getting there, right? And I think so. I talked about in the overall episode towards the end about the red Oni, blue Oni thing. As they go on their Tango and Cash adventure, and I think actually Daniel is already wearing blue. Johnny ends up putting on the red when they go together.
I noticed that, Zach. When you pointed that out, I watched it. I watched it at the meeting. Johnny's wearing blue this whole episode.
Yeah.
So you know what's interesting about that, because watching the episodes, I kind of paid attention to that too. And in Miguel's coma, I found it was really interesting that he's wearing his Cobra Kai gi, though the guy who he's fighting is in a white gi, and they have like black and white gis, but then on the end they have blue and red. And I don't know if it has any significance, but the back of the gi says it's called Yoshukai Karate, which I looked up and is actually a real karate place, I guess. But that term means striving for excellence in standard English. I don't know if that has any significance or not, but I thought that was really interesting.
Can I point out
that is cool.
Can I point out something I discovered about those fights on the second run? The first time it opens the season with that fight, like you mentioned, Josh, you didn't know if you were looking at some kind of a flash forward of him in the tournament at the end of the season or something, which I actually had a similar thought. I thought was interesting. But they show him and it's kind of neutral at front, but later on when his mom and aunt or whatever are talking to him while he's in the coma, talking to Miguel, and the doctor, they talk about things they wanted to try talking about the Dodgers or whatever. It cuts back to the fighting and he's losing. He gets swept. He gets punched. He's like barely dodging. He's not being victorious in the fight in the little fantasy. When Johnny comes in later and he has his little speech at the end of the episode, he's like, you got to fight. You got to push through. In the fantasy, now that Miguel starts winning and he starts blocking, he gets that little grip and he's like, you got to push through. And then he finally makes the throw and gets the other guy down. That choreography for that fight wasn't just random. They played it out as he was struggling, and it wasn't until Johnny was there that motivated him to be triumphant. I thought that was amazingly done. Yeah, and I didn't catch that the first time.
The other thing that I think it's interesting about that is, you remember the doctor said, maybe it was the nurse who came in and said, it's helpful for you to talk to him about things that he really likes. Yeah. And so they start talking to him about like the Dodgers and things, but nobody brings up karate, right? Because of what went on, he's Carmen obviously is very unhappy with the karate aspect of it. It's not until Johnny comes in and starts talking all of these, these Cobra Kai lessons that he's learned that's what happens. So, so that's that's interesting. That's a good catch.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I like that. I like when I catch things.
It's rare. You don't even understand plot, so I don't know.
No, I don't. I understand plot. I can't follow the plot. Once I watch it a few times, I can follow it. Now I can understand what's going on. Anyway, let's talk about Johnny sneaking in the ICU. Zach,
oh my gosh,
I love that because he does this. He goes to pull the doctor coat, and I'm like, really? Like that's what he's gonna do? Is this actually what's gonna happen? And then he's in the thing trying to pronounce the name. He's in the bathroom.
He's like, I'm Dr. L. Nguyen.
Yeah, he doesn't even know how to say it. And then, because it's a Vietnamese name.
Nguyen, yeah.
And then he does the thing that is Johnny's way of handling it, which is bash his head into something.
Well, before that, the guy comes out of the stall and he starts asking, and he's like, oh, doctor, I have a question for you.
Right.
Like, he just sees his face. He's like, oh, you're not a doctor. And Johnny's like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
I love when the very beginning when he goes up to the front and he just totally looks dilapidated and he's trying to hit on the nurse and he's like, come on, be a bad girl. And she says,
And he winks at her too.
and she's like,
family doctors or
family.
patients only. Is like, well, maybe you can make it or whatever. And then she's like,
Yeah, he's like,
family, patients, or dogs. Like, you're no fun.
yeah. It's so funny. Be a bad.
It's a very good Johnny moment. And then he comes out, it's just dripping. And that blood was just like pouring off that paper towel. And he's like, I think I need to see a doctor.
I also liked. I like when he's back there.
Yeah, the follow up.
Yeah, and then she's like, we might want to hold him overnight. He's got some blood in his urine. He's like, oh, I got in a fight yesterday. A little jam in the lemonade. It'll be gone in a
And she has this look like he's used to this, and he understands. And he's like, but this has been bothering me. He turns into the person. She says, I'll be right back.
Oh man.
Johnny was great in these episodes.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
So you know what? Do we have more to talk about the ICU?
No, I just thought it was all just really well done getting into it.
I can't remember from the first 2 seasons, but what is the tagline when you walk into the dojo, and it's when Johnny was running it? What statement was on the front wall? Like the wall that comes on the side.
Yeah, strike first, strike hard, no mercy.
Okay, because when Daniel walks in this time, that's not what's on there. It's fear does not exist in this dojo.
Oh, that's right. He repeated. Yeah, I did know that.
So I thought that was interesting how that was the one, Daniel walks in, and that's the first thing he sees when he walks in. He's going to go and confront Kreese, he's going in to see Johnny.
He's looking for Johnny.
When he notices it says fear does not exist in this dojo.
And he sees the cutout of Kreese, which is in 3. That's when he jumped out from behind it and startled him. So I think he had a little shock. He's like, seriously? And then, because he didn't know, that's the thing. He didn't know that there was the parting between Johnny and Kreese at that point. So when he
Johnny had told, the last thing he had heard from Johnny was that Kreese was gone.
Right.
So then Kreese is running it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that was a whole thing, but that was interesting. A callback to the original movie.
Yeah,
is they're talking, and Kreese is like, your student's the one that did this, and he's like, you know what they say, no such thing as a bad student.
Yes, when he pointed that out, I was like, that's brilliant, because that's what Miyagi said about him.
Yeah, and he even brings it up to me. He's like, oh yeah, so it's kind of hard to have your dojo drugged through the mud. And
I like to see what that little bastard's or that little man, whatever he said, face.
Called him a little bastard. Yeah,
that little
that's
bastard.
When he says, he kicked your butt more than once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was good stuff. So,
and he didn't find Johnny in that episode, right? He just left there and finds Johnny. No, he does find Johnny.
No, he finds him.
Yeah. At the end, they sort of team up.
So, what's that?
At the end is when they team up, right? Of the first episode.
Yeah, because he walks in, and then that's what or he walks up to him. He goes to his house or to his apartment.
Waiting for him. Yeah, that's right.
And he's waiting for him, and he says the only way we can end this is if we work together.
Yeah.
And so that's when they go together, and that's the end of the first episode.
Yeah. So the part we kind of glanced over is, I'm gonna ask Ashley about this. The part where Sam, she has her freak out at school, and then she leaves, and then she ends up back at the dojo, and they're still looking for her. Daniel goes back to the dojo and sees the In-N-Out burger. Holy cow, worst product placement ever, because I'm not an In-N-Out fan. I know I'm the minority in that, but he gets excited thinking it's Robbie and goes in the back, and then there's Sam, and then they have their little heart-to-heart. And that's when she has the little speech about fighting, and I can't remember what the exact line is, but she's just freaked out. She's worried about Miguel. She's worried about Johnny, or what's the kid's name? I don't like Robbie.
Robbie.
And but she has this thing where she's like I thought we were the good guys, and he said, and Johnny's like, we are, or at least we try to be. And that's the confusing part. I mean, not the confusing for the story, but I just mean like that's the part that makes it hard for her to internalize all these consequences and all the downfall of what happened. And Miguel kind of has that moment too later on in episode 2. But I want to ask you, Ashley, what did you think about that and her whole thing about? I don't know if you ever got in fights in school or anything. That's not really what I'm asking, but just like, did you Did you think anything differently about that than maybe we did as 30-year-old men with beards that I can't connect with this father-daughter moment like that? I thought it was really touching. He realized she was freaked out, and they sat down next to her, and he let her, pour her heart or get her feelings out, and then he put his arms around her.
Well, like, this was like really like her first opportunity of like really having real life experiences. Like, she's lived obviously like a very sheltered life. She's been wealthy her whole life. She's had this little Miyagi dojo experience in her, within a room within her house. She's never really had to struggle about anything, where this is all like relatively new, which is, I think adds to the PTSD level, like made it, Tori, obviously she's had a harder life. So the PTSD isn't going to be an issue for her, like, at all over this type of thing. You know what I mean? I mean, she's like not happy about it and she feels bad about it on her own way. But this is like really hitting Sam in a way that she's never been hit before, and so, she can't even, she can't even be at school. Like, she can't handle the fact that like there are girls like talking behind her back, like that first day when she like ran off.
Yeah. And
just hitting the stairwell again, she has that flashback of everything and she just can't handle it. And so she runs off and she wants to run away. And I think this is just like a growing experience for her, of her character, because, and then you see in like the next little bit where, even then when she's getting ready to go back to school, she's trying everything she can to cover up her scar. She has like this bandage on it when it's obviously scarred. She doesn't need a bandage, but she doesn't want it poking through her sweater. She's putting on her extra sweater, all these layers to try and hide it so she can like try and like just.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, when she's getting ready in the mirror, she tugs on her, bandage, trying to make sure it's all smooth, puts her sweater back on. Like, she's trying to like keep it hidden. Like, she doesn't want to like have that be a part of her life. And then I think after talking to her dad, she has that moment, which is like, no, this is part of life. We're trying to be the good guys. It's not always just black and white. There's a lot of gray in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a really good moment for her as well. And like Daniel being a good dad too,
Yeah, that's where I first was like, Daniel's showing a little, he's not all hot-headed and like, I'm not going to let them get away with this. It wasn't that attitude at all anymore. He's been humbled, like you said, Josh. And when I saw her walk into the school at that moment, it took me back to the beginning of the second season or at the end of the first season, where she goes into the dojo and she's like, I'm going to start doing the karate myself. Like, she just kind of puts on the gi and just starts, doing her thing. When she left the tournament, I was like, this is her way of getting her own balance in her own life. And just seeing that contrast from the end of that season to this season, how much that's completely gone upside down. And it wasn't her fault, Well, that's debatable, depending if you're going to listen to the other parents that are yelling about her messing around with the other boys. But it's just, and even in the fight itself, the reaction when Tori was coming up on her, like, she was just going to school trying to be a good kid. There's two really good kids in this show that really deserve to be together, Sam and Miguel.
Oh, geez.
Leave it at that.
Okay, well, going back to Sam's character, she doesn't delve into this too much, but I actually think what's interesting is she makes the decision to become better, but throughout the season, she actually gets a little worse before she gets better. Yes,
there's a little great Jedi in there,
and I like that, because life's not so simple, right? Yeah. Just because you say you want to do something doesn't mean you get up and you go and you instantly are this amazing person. It's always a process. So yeah, I like that for her, how it's like she had to go through her own journey and things got worse for her before it got better, even though she knew she wanted to get to this point.
Right. You see that.
Another thing that's interesting, going back to what Ashley said about her, kind of having real life experiences now. You're right. Like, in the first season, you learned that Sam has basically hung out with Aisha, and they were kind of doing like science camps and things like that. Like, they were a very sheltered group, and all of a sudden they get to high school and Sam becomes very popular and starts hanging out with popular girls. And, you got to imagine that. I would imagine that prior to that, boys didn't really pay a lot of attention to her, things like that. And now all of a sudden she's caught in this love triangle thing, and she's feeling like this whole thing is her fault, because this is her first experience with, probably you would think maybe even her first experience with like
dating and all that.
Yeah, like love interest. Yeah. She had the whole situation with Kyler that blew up in her face.
She did seem a little blind to his.
Yeah, and then she had the thing with Miguel, and then Miguel turned into a jerk thanks to Johnny, who apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, for one split second.
Okay, calm down,
Let's
Tim.
not bash up Miguel.
Yeah, and then she gets with Robbie, who's just a nice kid who's misunderstood. And then all
a nice kid that's okay, now you're going to the opposite extreme.
Yeah, and then, this nice kid has just been dealt a really poor hand, and so
you're such a troll. All right.
So
there's actually an episode in this season called Nature vs. Nurture. Is it episode 2?
That's 2. Let's move on to episode 2. Does anyone else have any thoughts on 1? Anything else you want to say?
Well, Josh, did you have a point you were getting to?
Oh no, I was just saying. My main point was that, Sam now she blames herself for everything that happened.
Everything.
Because I mean, the whole reason that any of them were fighting, Tori wanted to fight her because she had feelings for Miguel, and then, Miguel or Robbie and Miguel started fighting because of Sam. So Sam feels like it's really her fault, and that's because it is.
And no, I love when she said that though. And I'm gonna get emotional right now. Daniel stops her and he said, "It wasn't your fault. This started long before you were even born." And I was like, that is such an insightful thing. There's a comforting thing for him to say. Is like, this is so far not your fault. It was me. If it wasn't for me and Johnny, then none of this would have ever happened. I thought that was really, he knew exactly what to say in that scene. I thought it was a beautifully written scene and very well performed.
You know what else I find, and I'm kind of shooting to episodes that we haven't gotten to yet, but one thing that you learn in a later episode is that Daniel is currently the same age Mr. Miyagi was when he met Daniel.
Yeah, he says that. Is that accurate?
Well,
Ralph Macchio just looks insanely young. Like he is in his.
So Pat looked really old,
right?
Yeah, but the point is, I mean, yeah, he's in his, his character can be any age he wants it to be right now. It's fake.
I actually think it's in the ballpark though. Like it's not that far
That's
off.
Crazy to me.
So, but the point with that is that how interesting it is, because he keeps saying like Mr. Miyagi was this age and he had all the answers, but it seems like for a lot of these kids, he really does have all the answers. Like Sam is looking at him, he's saying all the right things to Sam.
Now
he does the right things to Robbie, even though Robbie doesn't understand it. He's sewing up all of his loose ends in this season for different things. So
the thing is, because Daniel thinks he doesn't have all the answers because he's still looking for answers and he doesn't have the answers for himself. But the nice things that because he has the answers for the people that need answers. So it's kind of fun that we get to see that, that he has the answers for people who need them. But Mr. Miyagi probably didn't have all the answers for things that he was going through too. You know what I mean? So Miyagi had answers for Daniel, but he might have had things that he didn't have answers for. And it's kind of neat to see that comparison through the season.
All right, so going into episode 2.
Yeah, Nature Calls or whatever.
What I like about episode 2 is this is the first time we get to see young Kreese and learn a little bit more about him.
Were you shocked by that?
Was I shocked by that?
Surprised when it suddenly went into, or did you see it coming? Who did you think it was? Did you think Kreese immediately?
No, I think everybody thought the football player was Kreese at first.
Yes, I did too.
Well, what was interesting? He pulls up in the same car that Miyagi gave to Daniel. He drives up in the 47 Ford. He's driving that yellow convertible.
I did notice that, and I was wondering if it was going to be some kind of way of how Miyagi got the car or something, and then it didn't go that direction. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that was so interesting about it was he pulls up in the car, and then he gets out, and he's like, I need to get something else. I need to get something with a little muscle to it. He's kind of like a tough guy about it. And then he goes inside. So it's all designed to make you think that that's Kreese, right? The guy comes up to him and hands him the army thing and all that. And he talks about how he looks at who you later find out is Kreese, and he's like, oh, he's a freak and he'll always be a freak, and making fun of him even though his mom had just committed suicide, and all that. And so, but it's
I mean,
not.
But for that time period, like that was like suicide just was like not a thing. So like it like their mentality towards that, like in mental health, you know, like it makes sense for that time period and why he has like these like deep-rooted issues with it.
Sure. Well, and he even says later on in the episode when he's talking to Tori, and I thought this was really interesting. You know, you learn that even Kreese has a couple of redeeming qualities, and he recognizes his own issues with mental health. You know, like it's starting. Hearing that, it kind of gives a little more context of how John Kreese is the way that he is. He's got a mental health issue in his family because he talks to Tori about it, and he goes, my mom was sick too, different kind of sickness. I didn't understand it then, right? Which tells you that he recognizes he has mental health issues. And, you know, so you're kind of seeing that here, you can see the perfect cocktail for somebody to become like John Kreese. He had mental health in his family. He has trauma from past, and then he gets hooked up, goes to Vietnam and becomes a Green Beret, like, and gets caught in a prisoner of war situation. Like that is a perfect cocktail for a crazy karate master.
And his girlfriend died, and his commanding officer turns on him and all that. Yeah, it's pretty traumatic. Everything that happens.
But you know what I liked about this episode? It was particularly the Kreese, the young Kreese stuff.
Right.
Is that he gets tripped. And you think, when I first saw it, my first mind was, oh, okay, so John Kreese we're trying to show that John Kreese was a nerd just like Johnny and just like Daniel, you know, and all that. But it turns out, you later find out that he actually knew karate then.
Yeah.
And he just
was still bullied.
Yeah, but the thing was, though, is I looked at that as him showing restraint like Miyagi-Do would. Right? He didn't just get up and attack the guy. Yeah. He didn't fight the guys until he saw that he needed to defend the woman's honor. The woman was getting hit, and then that's when he stepped in. And he's like, I'm not afraid of you. You know what I mean? And he took them both down using karate. So you can see that John Kreese, he had karate. He understood karate at one point. He understood true karate. It was for defense and for defensive honor of others, defending others. And it was through meeting this Green Beret commander, this captain who teaches him the no mercy aspect, that it became Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
So
I liked how Daniel even said that in their confrontation in the previous episode, where he said, it's a good thing that Miyagi taught me true karate, or that's why I'm not going to fight you. And then Kreese says it's inevitable. Like, you're going to fight.
Right.
And when you do, Johnny will be with me. And I love how that flips later. Anyway, go back to episode.
Well, and I think that's very interesting because you're seeing John Kreese's view of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like his view of the world is it is inevitable. There, like he starts telling the things he starts telling in that first thing. He tells the kids, you know, this is a cruel world and you have to be cruel. You know, you have to learn to be cruel because it's a cruel world. And think about all the things that you learn about John Kreese over the course of this season, right? Because he says to his girlfriend when he leaves, he says, because she's like, I don't know if I can handle this. And he's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to come back a hero, right? And like, so he had a mentality, he wanted to go and be a hero. And like, he did hero things, but at the same time, like at what cost? Like he lost his girlfriend. He had to he killed his captain.
Right.
And he had to, well, we'll get into that, I guess. We'll get into all that when we get into later episodes. But you'll see that like he learns a similar lesson to what Hawk kind of learned in that second season fight, right? That you know, we're in this situation because of my humanity. I'm not going to make that mistake again, right? I mean, that's the type.
He tells the students in this episode, he says, there's no good, there's no bad, there's just the weak and the strong. That's what he learned in those flashbacks, you know, encompassing that philosophy. And and it's that whole, you just can't lose. You have to win. You have to win. And it's just about being strong and surviving. That's all it's about. And if that means defeating others like mercilessly, that's how he survived Vietnam, as we saw. I liked all that. I also like when he told the kids what he put. When he's talking about Miguel, the motive for him sending the Cobra Kai out on this little vendetta he used Miguel to inspire it, and he says what they did to Miguel, they did to all of us, and you lost the battle, you guys were defeated, we lost troops. They said we're going to go out and we're going to win the war, and now you guys got to go out into action. But I like how he spun that, because I think that's part of Hawk's turn, is when he realizes that vengeance for Miguel isn't what he thought it was. Everything that he was doing, he thought he was doing for Miguel, until he's starting to see Miguel on the opposite side. Now he's fighting against Miguel, you know. He's like, it's all backwards. Kreese has really scrambled their thoughts, you know. I think that really you're seeing those seeds planted for that here.
Well, you also see in this episode Kreese's manipulation at work, because so there's that whole scene where they feed the mouse Clarence to the Cobra, and the poor kid, even Hawk is like, oh, make it Hawk Jr., you know, or whatever. Like, yeah. And
Can I just say I'm happy he's feeding it to the Cobra, and he wasn't going to make the kid break the mouse's neck.
Right. Yeah. I thought that same thing.
I'm like, oh, thank you. That's fine. Feed it to the snake.
Where'd that come from? Do a Lenny from Of Mice and Men, just.
Well, he's trying to corrupt the kids, right, or see how strong they are. That's.
And that kid was out. I didn't plan on that. I thought he was just giving a lesson to dirty him up a little bit. No, that kid was kicked out.
Yeah. And all the kids who had a problem with it, they all were kicked out too. And so, and this is where you see Hawk's kind of first descent. Was here he's seeing his friends who have been like loyal to Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Just because they made a mistake. Like they're gone,
or they're not ready for that,
right? And you know,
well, they're all coming from the same place he did, right? That's the lesson Johnny had to learn in the second season is, oh, well, I don't have to take people who are already, you know, jerks essentially. I can take kids who are struggling and I can help them become better. So that's where Hawk came from. That's where these kids came from, and those are the first people that were purged.
When Johnny was in that first season, when people started coming in, he kept telling Miguel they're not, you know, they're not Cobra Kai material. And then Miguel's like, those are my friends. He's like, yeah, that tracks. And so, but like, yeah, you know, I thought it was really interesting because Hawk is coming to him and saying, do you think this is really like a good, it's like almost like a Miguel Johnny relationship, right? Like Hawk comes to Kreese and he's like, is this really a good time to be cutting?
Yeah.
Gosh, I just realized that's a really good contrast from the second season, Johnny Miguel, because he does start attaching to Kreese in season 2. Hawk does. He starts attaching to Kreese, but Miguel doesn't. But then in this season, he goes too far and kind of.
And he has the same revelation that Johnny did in the first movie when he says, I want, you know, sweep the leg or whatever, and he has that shock, when Johnny has that shock reaction. He's like, who are you? Hawk realized that in the middle of the last fight, which wasn't necessarily executed. We'll get there. But that's exactly the same turn that happened for Johnny.
It's interesting that you bring that up because
I'm brilliant.
No, because I was going to tell you about something that's pertinent to this episode that we're talking about, not an episode later on down the road. So he's sitting there in his office, and he explains to him his rationale. And Hawk has one of those moments. He's looking at him like he doesn't really understand. And then Kreese says to him, "Do you have a problem with that?" Which is the same thing that Kreese said to Johnny when he said sweep the leg and gave him that same look. And then he goes, "Do you have a problem with that?" And he says, "No, Sensei." And Hawk said the same thing. And then right after that, that's when John Kreese starts manipulating Hawk, because then he says, you know, we lost Miguel and we did these things, and now we're going to need a new champion, and we're going to need a new champion with no fear, you know,
and mercy.
Yeah. And that's when Hawk was like, got it, you know.
So here's the question. And I thought about this tonight when I watched it again. When he said that, do you think he was saying, let's see what you got, kid? Or do you think he's playing, the Senator Palpatine, manipulating other people to get to Anakin? Do you think he's like, I think Robbie's my target. I just got to figure out how to get to it. What do you guys think?
I think he's just trying to purge anyone who's weak, right? And he's testing Hawk. And Hawk, because he gives that nod of approval. Sorry, that's a later episode. But there are things later that happen where he's like approving of what Hawk does. He's like, "Oh, good job," right? So I think he's okay with Hawk being successful.
Right.
But if he's not successful, he's like.
But the champ, do you think he's got his eye on Robbie at this point? Because there's no.
Yeah.
You think so, Ashley? Why?
I do, because he's someone who thinks far ahead. Like he plays long game. You know, so he has us all down. And I don't think he ever really fully intended to have Hawk be the champion. Like his little manipulation of making him think like, oh yeah, you can be it. But it's like, no, because he wanted to get Tori back because he knows like the type of personality that she has. And he wants to get Robbie in for a lot of things, you know? So I think that was my personal opinion.
I think you're right. I just think he's okay with Hawk succeeding as a Cobra Kai, right?
Of course. He doesn't want to
I do think
Hawk.
You're right.
The champ he's aiming for, where it says no mercy, that was demonstrated by Robbie. Robbie demonstrated no mercy. And it's interesting, too, how much John knows about the details of what happened in their social lives and in the fight, you know? It's like Johnny was kind of clueless to what these kids were up to. Kreese has his freaking ear to the ground, and he knows a little too much, maybe conveniently for the plot, but it's fine. But it's just kind of funny that he knows all their emotions, all their connections, who's doing what and who's interacting with who, that he can work all of that. And like Ashley said, play the long game, because you know what? He's freaking Senator Palpatine.
Well, and that's what's interesting, too. Like, more I think about it, you know, Kreese does have people he cares about. So, like, he does care about Tori, because he references Tori and he says, basically tells her, he goes, you know, you're a born fighter. You know, like he has respect for Tori because she's fighting through so many things. And I think he had that same thing for Johnny, you know, like that. It was kind of with the Cobra Kais, like the original Cobra Kais, you know, Kreese had a special relationship with Johnny. You know, it seemed like he had a special relationship with him versus the rest of them. Right. I think that John Kreese understands he needs to have soldiers that are going to die on the battlefield, and then he's got his special group and his
little apprentices. Yeah.
Well, and of all the senseis who reached out to Tori and helped her, right? Mm-hmm. And of course she's gonna lean towards that, the person who's actually reaching out and helping her. The other two haven't thought a second thing about her.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I was gonna ask, what did you think about that stuff, Ashley? Because I'm gonna go to you for all the girl stuff. No, I liked how it bounced back to that he's the one that and when she opened that door, I was like, oh my gosh, Kreese is already in action there. And I like the scene previous to that where it shows her landlord pressuring her for presumptuously, you know, sexual favors or whatever to accommodate the rent needs.
Right.
Incredibly creepy. Yeah. But yeah, I liked seeing her talking to her little brother and like, take this to mom, and she's taking care of the kitchen, taking out the trash, and she talks later how she's like got work 2 jobs and I can't remember what else she was doing. She got kicked out of school, trying to get her GED, all that stuff.
Community hours and everything else that she has to do because of everything that she started. And it's like nice that she acknowledges that it is her fault, but I don't feel like she gets to fully embrace the consequences of her actions because Kreese pulls her out. You know what I mean? Not saying that she deserves to have to work 2 jobs and take care of her mom. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, because he did the things that he did, she didn't have to.
He bails her out.
He bails her out, you know, and again, like, no one deserves to have their landlord, you know, pressure them for, you know, things like that. And that was messed up, and it's sad and everything. And the fact that she's actually like caring for her little brother, like, you know, when the door knocks, she doesn't know if it's the landlord. She doesn't know who it is. So she's like, go to the other room. Like, she's trying to protect her little brother, which is great. You know, that's a wonderful. So like deep down, you know, that she really does just have like a really hard life, but you know, and I can't remember what episode it's in, but it's like, just because everyone has a sob story doesn't mean you have the right to be like a jerk, you know what I mean? And like, she definitely like rides that all the time, you know, like she has to ride the fact that like, well, my life is hard. Well, everyone's life is hard, you know, it doesn't make you special.
You know what's interesting about that though, Ashley, is so that comes from episode 3, and that's Sam talking to Miguel. Right. And I just found that really like insensitive. Like it almost, to me, I felt like, okay, Sam, look, you've lived a charmed life. You know, like Miguel was kind of telling her like, you know, when she was like, Tori did this, and she's like, well, Tori you know, she's had a hard life. Her mom is sick and all these things. She's like, well, everybody has a sob story. And I'm like, well, what the heck is your sob story?
Right.
Like, your sob story is what? That, like, you can't choose which boyfriend you want. Like, you know what I mean?
Come on.
I mean, I know I'm being a little hard. I mean,
it's true. Sam should not have been the person to say that line because, like, there are people who have had it obviously like way worse. Like,
the same girl on the date with Miguel that's like, oh yeah, we go to the Lakers games, front row seats every game.
Yeah, right. I mean, so yeah.
Guys, come on. Everyone is tried to the maximum amount for what they can handle. Her trials are just as real for her as Tori is. Tori can just handle a lot more complicated domestic things that most people don't. And it's tragic.
No, they are.
What?
Okay, so no, I'm not disagreeing with you, Tim, but okay, so if there's a difference of someone, you know, saying that like my trouble is worse than your trouble, so therefore you don't have a right, you know, and that's kind of how it comes off because Sam's very defensive when Miguel's saying that. She's like, no, everyone has a sob story. It's like, no. Like,
I'll agree with that.
She's not embracing that Tori has a heart. Like, and she's not, it's how she said it. It's her delivery.
And it wasn't like she deserves it kind of a thing. It was just like, well, we're all having a hard time. And they all are. And Sam was like, she was trying to live her life and be socially accepted and kind of like move out of her being a kind of a nerd. And before all this started, and it's like, and like Daniel said, it's not your fault. This is not your fault. This is just everything happened. And the dark energies that surrounded her to get into the fight and everything, even that was motivated by Cobra Kai. Sam's had nothing to do with Cobra Kai. She was just the good guy.
I guess my argument would be is that she wants everyone to be sympathetic to her because people are talking bad behind her back, but yet she won't show any sympathy for Tori, who has very real, serious problems. That is my problem with Sam, and I think that's and I think that is a character.
That's not a problem with the show. It's an interesting character element, it's a character element of somebody who is clearly naive.
It's a naivety thing, exactly, and that's all I'm saying. It's like she's not like selfish and self-involved. She just doesn't comprehend or know everything that Tori's going through. And
it just goes back to her just being unaware in the fact that she hasn't really had real life experiences yet, and she's still having those she's just now starting to have real life.
Well, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but she does jump into a bunch of situations this season that she has no right jumping into that become her responsibility, right? Like she's still learning those lessons.
Yeah.
Right. And she suffers the consequences from her doing that, which is like really nice that she actually gets to suffer those consequences because she's trying to take on too much than she should. Yeah. But like back to what you were saying, Tim, it's like I feel Kreese, you know, he definitely wants Tori, but I feel he also is going to manipulate her. He's, you know, like, which is why he did what he did.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think he's doing what he's doing just for the sheer fact that he cares about her. You know, I feel it's like, no, he plays the long game and he knows what he needs to do to get her to do what he wants her to do.
Right.
Well, and the way he does it is it's crazy because all he does for the most part is instill terrible principles into them and then they go and do things. He doesn't, he sometimes gives them instruction. Like, he really wanted the Medal of Honor. He probably felt Miyagi didn't deserve it in season 2, right? So that's why he had Hawk go get the Medal of Honor. But I mean, a lot of the stuff this season, they just went and did.
Yep.
he just taught him bad principles, and they were like, "Yep."
So this is my big question about Kreese. Did he or did he not chop the guy's finger off?
No, he did not. No. Because he said, okay, we're going to have an arrangement. We're going to have an arrangement, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So no.
But that might solidify that he's absolutely going to stay true to this arrangement. Just saying, it's like
breaking off his finger. Well, I don't know. It just.
Would you put it past him?
We're gonna see it. We're gonna see this character in season 4, and he's gonna have like a Band-Aid on his finger.
I say he did it. Let's say right here. I say he did it. Josh, no.
It totally makes sense.
I
mean, I think it would totally track because apparently nobody who gets beat up in this show calls the cops ever. So
he's horrified. He's horrified. All right. I was just curious what you thought. Okay, let's move on to just gotta say, I love Tori. I love seeing her setting and dealing with stuff. And she's like, it's not about Cobra Kai and stuff for me. It's just about my personal life, and I gotta look out for myself, because that's been her whole life, is looking out for herself. And it just starts here, and then she has a loyalty to Kreese, which goes on from there. We'll talk about it in next episodes. But let's talk about Johnny and Daniel and their Tango and Cash adventure. A lot of fun stuff with them, playing with the radio, eating the corn nuts. It really felt like Bad Boys for me, the first Bad Boys. A lot of those little moments, making a mess in the upholstery. But is that the right word? Did I just say that right?
This whole thing, just overall, I have a sensitivity to this in movies where the protagonists go and do a bunch of things, and then nothing they do matters. And that totally happened here.
No, it didn't. I'll argue that.
What?
I'll argue that.
They go searching around forever, and nothing works. And then they get a phone call from the mom. Their detective work did not accomplish anything until the mom called and said, "Oh, he's here where you guys started, by the way."
Right. Yeah, so they go to the mom. Excuse me. They go to the mom, which is hilarious because when they walk in, the lady's like, oh, she just sees Johnny and just looks at him, and she's like, oh, you're a very brave man checking in here. And Daniel just plays with it. He's like, yeah, he's brave.
Yeah, and you know what's really funny is I love how Johnny's like, I'm not checking in. I'm no quitter.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, Dan's just like laughing at him. But yeah, just from his appearance, he's like, yeah, you're good for you for checking in. Anyway, we go talk to the mom, and the mom's like, I haven't seen him. But I like that she's in rehab. It brought her back a little bit of an arc. Because I just watched this the first year with a friend. They're like, oh, she's a terrible, terrible mother, terrible person. What are you say, Josh?
I was going to say, I think you see some of that terrible motherhood in this.
Oh, really?
Because
this episode or later?
In this episode. So she's sitting there, and her and Johnny are going at it a little bit, and then she says something really interesting. She says, I thought about she's in this like high class, country club, place that I guess Daniel and Amanda are paying for. And she's like, oh, I thought about checking out of this place to go look for Robbie, but my life coach said that I shouldn't, right? It recommended differently. And Johnny calls her out on it, because Johnny's like, oh, your life coach said it? And he goes, you might as well have just burned your money. Yeah. Like, basically saying she hasn't changed at all. Yeah. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay, Johnny's being a jerk. But the second time I watched it, I was like, wait a minute, you know what? Here's a mother who's putting her own well-being above that of her son's, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, that's because she easily could have checked out and gone right back. No one's gonna stop her. You know what I mean? And but she has a good life where she's at, and so she's gonna kind of chill there.
You're right. I can see that. I mean, I don't know. She seemed at least a little more broken, but that could just be her I don't know, reactions and stuff. I don't know how much Claire's reacting to John or to what happened with Robbie either.
So the other thing that I thought was very interesting with Robbie, that whole situation at the end of the episode when Robbie gets arrested, she's there with Robbie until Daniel gets there, and as soon as Daniel gets there, she gets up and leaves.
Right.
And
she was there when they arrest him.
No, she came back. She comes back, but when Daniel comes, she walks away.
Well, she lets him talk to him. It's his new mentor. He knew that.
Why wouldn't she?
No, she could have stayed aside.
Yeah.
She's straight crossing the side of the lawn, because when they arrest him, she's right there. She just gave him time to talk. I didn't see a problem.
She walks back in with the cops. It's like she went to like, oh, I know where they are. Come with me, like kind of thing. Right.
Well, yeah. I was no problem with that.
Well, I just thought it was an interesting choice to have her get up and leave. If it were my kid, even if a mentor was coming and I hadn't seen him and he'd been homeless for the last 2-3 weeks because he kicked a kid off of a rail, and I know he's going to jail, I'd want to spend as much time as I could with him before he left, even if the mentor was going to be there.
But we know she's been an absent mother the whole time, and he's been out on his own in the streets for who knows how long.
That's what I'm saying, is that I found it an interesting
still awful.
This character, because even though she's getting better, she still has those same qualities, same qualities that Johnny has, Daniel has. Daniel's a hothead. Johnny seems to not be able to, not screw something up. They all have like their faults, and they show through. And I just thought it was a good, subtle choice to kind of show that
It's not
she's
just
still,
whitewashing, she's just magically different.
yeah, she's still got, and that's so true. Right? If you've ever dealt with anybody who has substance abuse problems, or somebody who is an alcoholic or anything like that, you know, just because they kick it doesn't mean that they don't have some of the same tendencies and personality traits.
Well, they never, a lot of them, they never really kick it. It's always there. You're just always fighting it, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well,
So-
what about when they go track down the other two guys? And I think you'll remember, Josh, you're the one that pointed out that the guy, the one 80s porn star looking guy, shaved his mustache after Johnny made fun of him, and he grew it back.
Yeah.
With a little goatee, like to try and bounce it out or something. But I was like, oh, this is the same guy. But how did they get there? I don't remember how they even got to found them there. Daniel said, like, I know where they are or something like that.
No, yeah. He said he knew where they were, and she had said, "Oh, there's always those two idiots."
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny how he called her Tweedledum and Tweedledumbass. Because that's what he called him in the first season when he met him. Yeah, and so, but
and then he like hits him, and he's like, "He just hit me." And cop's like, "Yeah."
yeah. I love that whole sequence. I love how Johnny tries to intimidate him, and then Daniel just moves a little bit, and they're like, "Whoa!" And he's like, "You're afraid of this guy?"
Yeah. So then they go, and then they're defeated and heading back home, right, or whatever, and then they're at the gas station. Is that what happens next?
Yeah.
So then they see the van, and then Johnny takes over the car and starts chasing them down. Then they head into the garage. Now,
You know, wait, going back to that, hold on. Did you notice? I don't know why I noticed this, and I don't know if it has any pertinence to anything, but I found it an interesting choice that Johnny is filling up Daniel's gas tank. Did you notice that? Like, he's the one who's the one filling up the gas tank. I don't know why that, like...
It's because he asked Daniel to go get food. Remember? Like, he went inside to pay. Like, Johnny's not going to pay for anything. So he'll fill up the tank while Daniel goes in and pays for gas and gets snacks. Was it a churro or something? The gas station?
He's like, what are you, too good for gas station food? And Daniel,
Which I was offended by that. I love gas station food.
I know. I'm a big fan. Okay, I got a funny story about that. Totally off topic. Okay, so when I was a young single adult, age 22 with no money, I had a girl that wanted to go out on a date, and I didn't have very much money, so I was like, "Why don't we go to AM/PM?" Didn't get a second date.
I was like Johnny in the first episode.
Yeah, I was like, "Let's get some hot dogs at AM/PM."
Well, they go and chase down the guys, and then they run. The guy, they scared, and he runs into the that jump
Chop shop.
Yeah, chop shop. That's what it's called. And he walks in, and Daniel's like, "Oh, let's go." Because he's like, Johnny goes, "Hey, we gotta get out and pursue on foot." He's like, "On foot?"
Yeah.
So first they had talked to the wife, and she's like, "Hey, Mrs. LaRusso." He's like, "You guys know you're not actual cops, right?" He's like, "It was kind of a good cop, bad cop thing." He's like, "You know, you're not cops."
Yeah. She's like, it was more like he's like, it was like kind of a good cop, bad cop situation. She's like, it was actually a no cop situation.
Yeah. So I like that. They get in there.
You know what wait, real quick before we end that part. My favorite thing that happened when she calls is Johnny like leaning over to talk into the steering wheel.
giving just him, that whole scene, giving all the rest of the info that Daniel doesn't want to say is just great. He's trying to give her the truth without the details, and Johnny's just...
No, you had to mention the fight. You had to
we were at the prison. What? Why were you at the prison?
I'm sorry, did you say the prison?
Yeah. Really good. And I like seeing them together where it's not just ending in some stupid misunderstanding like every other season. It does flesh out a little smoother now. Anyway, they get to the chop shop, and then Daniel's like, we're trying to be more bureaucratic and let's get out of here. And Johnny's like, I'm not afraid of these guys. Then they start the fight. And I gotta say, Ralph Macchio's stunt double looked fantastic, and I liked that. Now Daniel, or he does too. Honestly, he really does look a lot better than he did in season 1. So good job for Ralph Macchio. But some of the moves that the stunt double did, it's a stunt double, was pretty good. And I liked that fight, and I didn't like it in the trailer, and we talked about that in our trailer reaction. But I liked, and that last move they did where Daniel does the flip high kick, and then Johnny does a sweep, and the guy goes down really fast. I thought that was smooth and really cool done with editing. But I gotta say this, You guys can challenge me on it. Daniel's kind of a hypocrite because wasn't his whole thing in the last season all this stuff about you got to be able to sense your buddy behind you and blah blah blah, all this stupid balance crap, and have your omniscience and your omnidirection going. But then like Johnny's the one that's like, hey, duck, because there's a guy behind you. He throws a wrench, and like Daniel was completely oblivious to this guy coming up behind him, and Johnny was like watching for it. So either one, Daniel's a hypocrite and doesn't really have that mastered, or Johnny's just really good at knowing from Cobra Kai that you got to watch your back and there's someone that can come up from a cheap shot.
Can I throw something in the mix?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the red Oni, blue Oni thing.
Okay. Oh, go for it.
Red Onis are full chaos, and fighting with Johnny would be dealing with chaos. And when a blue Oni and a red Oni are fighting together, they can't work together super effectively most of the time. And then usually there's a moment when they do work together, like the sweep and the spinning kick.
And in that fight, Johnny was a lot more offensive, and Daniel was reacting to people coming.
Way more defensive, yeah. There's a contrast there that they're exploring. So it's possible that Daniel is a little out of his element there because of the chaos going on, which is true. He didn't want to be in that fight, by the way. He said, we got to go. He was kind of dumb and said, let's go call the police out loud, but he didn't want to be there.
And he said, no, police, we can work this out. And then Johnny's like, just throws him out. That's what was interesting. Johnny pushes Daniel aside, out of his way to go at the guy. Daniel was in the way of his target. He went to push him for safety so he can get ready to get back into the fight.
That's super red, Oni. It's so great.
I like that fight a lot. I
don't know if I necessarily liked or disliked the fight. I think that the thing that I found so interesting was at the end of the fight when they've won, Daniel sees Johnny just kind of going overboard on punching this guy, and it kind of made me reflect a little bit on the Bobby Johnny interaction at the Bobby Johnny interaction in Karate Kid 1 when they caught up to Daniel after he did the hose thing. Bobby's coming up to him and he's like, leave him alone, he's had enough, and he's like, I'll decide when he's had enough. And Johnny kind of had the same reaction here. He's punching this guy and he's like, he has information. He's like, he told you everything he knows. And at the very end, Daniel's like, I should have known. I can't. You're just a crazy person. And that's when they kind of both blame each other for Robbie. Both of them carry a lot of guilt for what Robbie did.
Yes.
And they both kind of call to that at the very end when Johnny's like, well, I don't know, you're the there's no such thing as a bad student kind of type of thing.
He says he's your student. And
then
he
was your student.
Zach, this is what I was saying. This is where it came full circle for me. That I really thought this was beautiful. I didn't catch it the first time. Johnny says that, like you said, Josh, and then Daniel goes, well, maybe he just has a little too much, or he says, I'm able to admit my failures, or maybe he just had a little too much of you in him. But him saying, I'm able to admit when I fail, that jumps into Johnny's brain, and that's when he bails. He says, where are you going? He says, I have somewhere I have to be. He has to go take care of his failure, and that's when he goes to find Miguel, who's now woken up. And then he walks in and has that moment, and because his failure, he's like, this is a lost cause with Robbie. We can't track him down. This is not going anywhere. Like Zach was saying, we're back to square one. Daniel went to go take care of Robbie. But Miguel has been Johnny's focus. Johnny took ownership over Miguel. He says, I will not fail you. I will not let you down. I will be there for you. And we know he does fail again. When Daniel says, I can admit when I failed, Johnny's like, I'm not going to fail this kid. And that drives him, and he gets to the hospital. And then then there's that moment, and he walks in, and Miguel's like, I can't remember what he says, but he comes in and he's like, why did this happen to me? He's like, I did everything you said, and I was merciful. Now why did this happen? And without any answers, Johnny just looks at him, and he's just like, I don't know. He has no response. He has nothing to say, no comfort. And then Miguel just like, is just so broken emotionally and physically. He doesn't know what to do, and he's like, look at me. I may never do anything. Look at me. And Johnny starts looking down because he can't look in the eye. He says, look at me. And he just shakes his head and he's like, just get out of here. And I love how how passionate, how empty, emotionally empty he was in that scene. I think that was the best Miguel scene of the whole show. And there's been a lot of great ones, but I think that was the best moment for him.
It was definitely a strong moment, for sure. And,
but that was a failure for Daniel, for Johnny too. Even he got there and then he was shot. He was kicked out, and he's like, he couldn't. He yelled at him. He says, "Get out!" And then he just.
I think this is also the episode where Carmen is kind of telling him, all of the people who drop stuff off, like, he's like, "Oh yeah, your very pale friend dropped this off and said it's not a UV light sleeve, so don't keep it in the sun or whatever." And then the LaRussos had given something, and he's like, "Where's Sensei?" All that. And
he's saying, well, he can't speak, and she's like, "Water? You want water?" He says, "Where's Sensei?" And I like they called him Sensei. He's not bailing on Johnny.
So also we see here the kind of real conflict that Johnny just seems to be having throughout all the seasons, in that he's got to be there for Miguel or he's got to be there for Robbie, and it seems like he continually seems to choose Miguel over Robbie, which, like, for example, he should have been out looking for Robbie, but instead he finds out that Miguel woke up from the coma, so he goes to see Miguel.
He did both ways. When Miguel woke up, Johnny wasn't there because he was looking for Robbie. Later on, when Miguel goes home or whatever, or when Robbie gets released, or when he had the meeting with the father, he's with Miguel. Like, he can't juggle both.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that at times when he should be with Robbie, he's with Miguel.
Yeah, I like how human it is. He's trying so hard. He's trying so hard.
No, I understand, and it's obviously a choice to get the characters to where they need to be for the story arc. But
I think this fun Tango and Cash episode or adventure got us to that emotional point for Johnny and Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
anyway, for us to watch.
So another thing, and I just thought of this, found it really interesting, going back to the young Kreese stuff.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's very significant or not, but when he's getting on the bus, he's talking to his girlfriend and he calls her Dollface.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that he also calls Amanda LaRusso Dollface later on in the season, when she comes to the dojo. And so it's almost a term of endearment for him that has kind of turned into like a derogatory thing,
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting. It was kind of a sweet thing when he said it to her.
Right.
More of a sweet comment when he said it to Amanda LaRusso.
Well, it's because, like, Betsy was his love. You know what I mean? That's why he was doing everything he was doing, was for Betsy. And then, later on, things happen, and it no longer is. It's just bitterness that poisoned him. Like, that was the turning point for him. With what happened to her.
Yeah. Did I miss a line where Daniel was talking to someone? I wrote this down at like 3 a.m. when I watched it the first night. But where Daniel was talking to somebody who said, "Our mistakes are not what we are"? Doesn't he say that to Sam? Our mistakes are not.
Oh, he says that to Robbie.
Oh, he says it to Robbie?
Yeah, when it went right before he says,
yeah,
and he's like, this next part is going to be very hard, and then that's when the police come and he says, "This is the best."
And here's my thing that actually really upset me about that whole scene. He should have had a conversation. The cops should not have barged in. He should have given him the opportunity to turn himself in. Like, hey, listen, this is the reason why I think you need to do this. Like, he forced it on him. Like, so it's like, it wasn't, he didn't
actually turn himself in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you saying Daniel ambushed him and forced him to turn himself in?
No, because he didn't. Like, he goes there, and like, he should have been able to have a conversation with Robbie. Like, hey, Rob, because like, Robbie's smart. He's not an idiot. He's had to like function and figure things out his whole life because he had like, low life parents, and it's just like, Daniel could have had a conversation with him, talked to him what he talked, the attorney talked to him about, like, this is what's going to happen if you turn yourself in. Will you give yourself that opportunity? And like, it could have been worked out, but no, like, Daniel made an opportunity for the cops to ambush him.
So
which
do you
wasn't
think
okay.
Daniel contacted the police on his way there? Because that's how I thought it happened.
You thought what happened?
I thought he got a phone call from the mother saying he's there, I'm coming, or whatever. And on the way there, he said, call the police so we can force him to do the right thing. And they showed up and had the conversation. And then they just came in at that time.
But there wasn't a conversation. That's what I'm saying. There should have been a conversation. But if there was a conversation, then there wouldn't be the anger and bitterness with Robbie against Daniel. And, so it's like, I guess that would have.
But he's a punk kid who doesn't make the right decisions. So, just say it. What do you think, Zach? How'd you interpret all that?
Yeah, I think that's right. Because doesn't even Robbie says to Daniel, you're just keeping me here. You were just keeping me here for the cops. And Daniel doesn't deny that. He doesn't deny it at all. He's all like, yeah, pretty much. So you could turn yourself in.
He's like, I'll visit you every day. I'm gonna help you through this and all that stuff. He's still trying to be there.
And then Robbie says, don't bother.
Yeah.
And Daniel tries to call him. He wouldn't take his calls.
Yep.
And so, and then,
He's a little punk. He doesn't respond to Sam. He doesn't respond to Daniel. He doesn't respond to Johnny's the only one he gives a shot. He gives a shot to Johnny, which is interesting, but we'll get there. All right. Well, I'm sorry that was so frustrating for you, Ashley. Just kidding.
That wasn't frustrating for anyone else. The whole purpose of him going out to Robbie was so that Robbie could turn himself in. But he didn't even give Robbie the opportunity to do that.
No, I agree with you completely. This is my point. They went out to go find him. They didn't find him. He just calls and says where he's at, and then he doesn't even get the chance to really turn. I pretty much agree with you in the overall.
I thought you were saying if you don't resist arrest, that's you surrendering.
He wasn't surrendering. He tried to run.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't.
But like you said, you need that to get to the next part of his.
Well, okay. Well, hang on. Let's end on this. But if Johnny had Daniel had had the conversation with Robbie saying you have the opportunity, is it the right thing for Johnny or for Daniel just to let Robbie just leave?
Well, Robbie could
run, say, well, I can't stop you.
The way they could approach it is Robbie could say, fine, I'll go in, but don't talk to me anymore. I don't trust you anymore. And in that way, you still have the same emotional status for him to.
But what if he says no? Isn't it the right decision for Daniel to be responsible, especially with his dealership online, for him to say, hey, and be an accomplice, to say, the cops need to be here on the scene either way. I'll give him a chance, but if he doesn't take it, he's got to be arrested. No?
No.
So Daniel should have just let him run?
I don't think Robbie would have done that. I think if they actually had a conversation.
Choice.
Like if he had given him the opportunity to have, here are all the options. This is what's going on. You can run for your whole life and you will get caught because you're a teenager who can't,
Yeah.
Right, you can't do everything. So it's like, here's your options. You can, turn yourself in and you're going to have a much lighter sentence. Robbie would have thought it through. He would have, but if what you're saying is right and he didn't want to and he decided to run, then yeah, Daniel should have let him run. Wow. It would have kept the trust of that situation, because here's the thing, Robbie has never had an adult figure in his life that's actually been someone he could depend on, and until the Russos. And so you had that whole building up of relationship between Robbie and the Russos, and then it all just gone instantly with that one thing.
It's interesting. I just think I think either way, right? Or if Robbie makes a right or wrong decision, the right decision for Daniel was to have the police there ready to do what they need to do. Because that's the whole reason they didn't. Because in the beginning, his wife was like, "Hey, we got to call the cops," and he's like, "No, we got to give him a chance. And we'll try." But that's an interesting. That's a parental complex decision of what's right and wrong in this gray area of the ping and P. What is it, Zach? The red and blue chi.
Red oni and blue oni.
Yeah.
Pay attention, Tim.
The red
you're
and blue.
You're not the only one around here who talks.
Anyway. Good stuff. Anyway, I liked how it ended. I love the stuff with Miguel, and that shoots us into a lot of sadness in the next episode. But yeah, any other thoughts on anything in these episodes? count or whatever plot reset and whatever nature calls, whatever the episodes are called.
Plot resets.
Aftermath and nature calls. Anyway, all right. Well, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, Zach, thanks for I didn't do introductions, but Ashley and Josh are always here, and Zach is always here when he can to talk about Cobra Kai. And
Here for Cobra Kai. That's
into some fun stuff hitting Okinawa soon in this wonderful story. But thanks for watching if you did, and if you think I'm right that Daniel's a good parent, I'm the one here defending Daniel for a change. How about that, you guys?
This is crazy, man.
Anyway, if you have any thoughts or anything on or things we missed, please leave them in the comments below, and we will read them and respond because we like talking about this clearly. But anyway, till next time, thanks for watching Saints on Cobra Kai.